Hi, my name is Sadie, and you're watching Youth at Work on RPTV. I'm here with two special guests, Linda and John, to talk about our safety and health at work. Would you say most injuries are environmental related or a lack of training?
Well, that's pretty hard to say. Yeah. Although, I mean, when you look at the most serious injuries, such as fatalities, when people die at work, they're related to the safety conditions in the workplace. If you call like a lack of fall protection or lack of guardrail at a construction site at a height, the greatest number of fatalities are from falls at work. So, I mean, that could be considered, I suppose, in some ways environmental, but it's also like basic safety.
Yeah, okay. How many cases do you guys work on annually?
I think we open around 70 new cases annually, and when we open a case, this is a case that's going to go to a tribunal such as the Ontario Labor Relations Board. We do some human rights work as well, or employment standards. So those are open cases. And then in advice, we give around 400 advice calls. We give advice to around 400 people per year, or have 400 calls per year in our area of expertise. And more or less.
Do you think there's a lot that go unreported?
The difficulty is you have your rights under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, but at the end of the day, it's the individual worker on their own who has to complain either to their employer or to the Ministry of Labor or to come to us. And they want to know what their consequences are. Under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, the worker has the right to refuse unsafe labor, but if their employer fires them, they're the ones out of the job. They're the ones who have to find the help that Linda and I give to start an application at the Labor Board. And so some workers think maybe it's easier to just, hope for the best and not get injured and not complain and keep the job. And this is a struggle that individuals have. The difficulty is you don't know what the consequences are. In 2013, there were more work-related deaths through injury or disease than there were homicides. And so the danger you have to face is one that you can't expect. And so people fear for their jobs and they don't call, and the consequences they don't know until it's too late.
So there are hundreds of thousands of injuries a year, and I would say probably thousands of them are serious injuries, serious like permanent injuries, and hundreds of deaths. So it's a serious subject, and we would urge people who don't know what their health and safety rights are or are uncertain what to do, particularly low-wage workers. These are the people we represent, people without unions, to call us for advice, and also not to be shy to call the Ministry of Labor, even on an anonymous basis. And get advice about how to be safe at work.
Would you say the rate of injuries has gone up over the years, or do you think we've gotten better?
It is sadly, it just hasn't gone down. Okay. I think the rate of fatalities is more or less the same over the years.
Okay.
There's some difficulty with that, depending on who's collecting the numbers and what kind of measurements they're using to produce those numbers. I know there's been some dispute about that.
Do you have any tips for low-wage workers?
Well, I think that they found that young workers, low-wage young workers particularly, very early on in the job are most likely to be injured early on in a job for lack of training, and also for the need for the income, the fear of losing the job. So I guess my advice to young workers would be to do what they can to be trained and not to be afraid to call for advice, to call us or to call the Ministry of Labor for advice. But if they suspect there's something wrong, to report it and to raise it with the employer.
Yeah.
Workers have three fundamental rights. The right to know, and I would urge anyone who has a question or has any concern about their workplace to ask, because it's their right to know what they're dealing with, because they're the ones who have the consequence of it. And they have the right to participate in health and safety be it with a health and safety committee or as a health and safety representative. But most importantly, they have the right to refuse unsafe labor. If they believe that the job they have has an inherent risk to it and they feel that there's going to be an accident or they feel unsafe, it's their right to stop and refuse it and wait for an employer to either address their concerns or raise it with the government through the Ministry of Labor to make sure they're on safe grounds. You want to come home first and foremost.
Is there anything you would like to add that you think the youth should know about?
Well, I think workers should know that they don't have to keep their problems at work in the workplace. They're very encouraged by their employers not to go outside for help, and they should know they don't have to do that. They can call for help, and it's, they're not a bad team player if they do call for help.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
No problem.